This weekend I did some light reading, as you can see, and no, I didn't read the entire book. I've read all of Lovecraft's stories before in this tome. I've read only one of his stories, The Color of the Space. And The Color of the Space is one of my absolute favorite Lovecraft stories, and I'll explain you why. The reason I like this story so much is because it ties to a very mundane horror that, okay, it's not that mundane, thankfully, but yes, there is a real life equivalent to the horror in The Color of Space. And no, it doesn't have to do anything with the current issues in March 2020. It's about radiation poisoning. So basically, it's a horror we all had last summer as we were watching a very popular HBO show. Color of Space is a story that really stands out for me. And I have to point out that we often forget how well read Howard Phillips Lovecraft was. Because, okay, it's 2020, so every video about Lovecraft is obliged to start with a disclaimer that yes, he was a racist dude, and he was. Okay, let's not beat around the bush. The dude had some very weird opinions about race and culture and all this kind of stuff. And he was also living in his mother's basement, and then on his aunt's basement, or in his wife's apartment in between. And he spent the entire day writing letters to other people he have never met, and they were all over the place. And he had a ton of conversations about literature, religion, politics, science, all this kind of stuff. There are even rumors that he never had sex in his life. So yes, you can say that Lovecraft used to be a Redditor, alt-right incel Redditor, and century before Reddit was a fact. So yeah, that makes him an amazing person. And he was often very, very well aware of scientific issues. I mean, in his story Dreams in the Witch House, he mentions some very cutting edge theories like Einstein's theory of relativity and non Euclidean geometries, which were quite cutting edge back then. And in most of his stories, he's very aware of science and the latest developments in scientific knowledge, which was not easy back in the 1920s and 30s, where there was no internet. You have to read magazines and newspapers and all this kind of stuff and be very well read in order to know about scientific theories. The Color of Space was written in 1927, and while it's never explicitly stated by Lovecraft that he wrote this story based on the real life cases of radium poisoning, it was something that was discovered in the mid 20s, and it was discovered in a very tragic way because I was reading a blog about the science behind Lovecraft, and there were a lot of blog posts about The Color of the Space, at least four of them, about the physics behind it. So that's quite interesting. If today we can have a whole analysis of the science behind what he was writing back then. And there was this case of the Radium Girls. There were some women in the 20s who were painting watches with radium laced paint in order to make it glow in the dark. So they had a brush, they had radium laced paint, they were dipping the brush in the paint, and they were painting the hour marks on their watch. And you know what you do when you have a brush and paint? After you use the paint, you lick the brush. And if there is radioactivity in paint, that yeah, then yes, it's a very bad idea. And the blog I saw had some photographs of those women, and they were not nice to see. So even though it's never specified that Lovecraft had seen, have read about it, and articles about it, and all the stuff, it's very probable that he was inspired by this real life tragedy. Of course, it's a weird tale, and I doubt he had any intention of make anything he wrote scientifically accurate. But then again, I mean, it was all brand new, so yeah, it's very close to the real life phenomenon. Reading The Color of Space today, you cannot but think that yes, he was talking about that, and looking in retrospect about what was happening back there and what was the scientific consensus, yeah, it's probably inspired by that. So let's talk about the story, The Color of Space, because it's very well written. I mean, I read this story again and I was awestruck by how well written it is. I mean, the beginning is very spooky. It describes a haunted place, a piece of woodwork at the west of Arkham, the fictional city where all of Lovecraft stories take place. And okay, he has some overlong sentences, but he is in great control of his vocabulary. He's not using some very large and impressive words all the time like he does in other stories. He has a great rhythm in his story. There is some musicality in it. It's very well. It's very atmospheric. And we have one of his tropes from the beginning. We have a scientist coming in and listening to stories. The writing is very reporter-like, and that's something he used a lot in order to give credibility to his story. He put a layer of, I've heard the story that happened by somebody who is credible, I guess. He's a scientist, he's a man of science, so he's aware of what is happening. Make it ring true, even though distances the reader from the horror exactly, but he does some other tropes to come around that. So the scientist goes to the woodland area that is of very ill repute, and there's going to be a dam built upon it. So there will be a reservoir to funnel water to Arkham. There is a piece of dead earth, blasted, a cart basin, and there used to be a farm there, the Gardner farm. So he asks around about the farm. Most of the people are not talking about it. They are evading. He asks an old man and he learns what happened years ago. And Lovecraft doesn't go straight into the narration. Instead, he describes the reaction of the scientist, and he says that I packed my bags and went to Chicago, and I don't want to drink the water of Arkham because something scary is there. And we have another trope of Lovecraft. We have his vagueness. His narration gets vague, and that is often done in a way that it builds threat. I mean, you get the hook here that something awful is about to happen, and you have to keep reading because what can be so awful that scared this man of scientists? This old man say, and how this very rational man found this credible enough to run away. So, what happened 40 years ago from our point of reference? We had a meteorite that fell from the sky on the Gardner farm. The meteorite was weird. It was from a very soft and porous material that was burning on its own and was shrinking. And that description pretty much reminds me of any radioactive element because it's porous and there is something called half-life, meaning that it shrinks if left on open air. But here half-life is very fast. Some scientists come along and they do tests, but they don't get many results. The element of the meteorite is not reacting to any reagent except that the spectrographer shows that it gives a very weird and alien color, and also the meteorite interacts with silicon, so that means that bonds with the earth. And when they dig after the meteorite deteriorates, they dig up the impact crater and they discover there are some globules in the dirt that they break and a color comes out, this weird color that they don't, it's alien, and then these globules also disappear. And then we have the effects from the meteorite coming into play. We have the flora of the farm affected first. The trees give fruit very quickly, very early, and the fruits are giant, but also they taste weird and they're inedible. We have the grass growing very fast, gets some very weird colors, some gray, some indigo, this kind of colors, and the entire farm is starting to glow in the dark after a while. So yes, that pretty much describes radium, even though the color is alien. But yes, we have some classic tropes that we often see in horror that has to do with radiation, like some weird traces around the farm, like giant animals that cannot be. And domesticated animals like horses and dogs are afraid to go there. They feel threatened. And we also learn that the well in the farm is contaminated by this color and the water gets a bitter taste. Then we have the fauna being affected as the farmyard animals are rotting alive. They grow tumors, I guess, and they get distorted. The form gets distorted, and then they die, and their flesh is dry and inedible too. Then the color affects the people on the farm. The mother is going crazy because she sees something that is invisible to everybody else, and she says that it feeds off her, and she uses only verbs about it, never nouns. She cannot describe what is happening to this color. And then the children fall prey to something and they disappear. Finally, when the old man who reads the story goes there, because he's the neighbor, he goes into the attic. The mother is locked in and finds something distorted, a mockery of human form. And of course, we have another Lovecraftian trope here that he does not describe what he saw exactly, and the scientist who hears the story and relays this to us say that some things are better left unsaid, and that's the trope of never describing the horror, leaving the threat and the distortion vague for us to imagine ourselves. And that's a bit of a tired trope for Lovecraft because he does that too often. The indecipherable, unspeakable horror that cannot be described is such a cliche at this point that we laugh at it. But yes, here it sort of works, and it's not quite clear what happened, but it is left to believe that the caller was actually an alien vampire that fell from a meteor. It fed off everything alive on the farm, and then at nightfall, it just blasts from the well. It resides into the sky and leaves behind only dead earth. Nothing is growing in this dead earth. It's like the earth is salted in a way, and everybody is afraid of it. And then comes the one sentence that haunts me since the first time I've read the story, and it says that this patch of dead earth expands an inch a year. And that leads our protagonist to understand that probably not all the colors have left the place. There are still other colors, other eggs like the one that broke and gave us this thing that are down there and are waiting to feed another life. And that's the Lovecraftian trope I absolutely love, and that's the remaining threat, the lingering threat, the lingering horror. After we have reached a crescendo, after the main horrifying event in Lovecraftian story is resolved in a way, there is still something left to bite our protagonists. There is still a threat left, and it's left hanging. Creates sense of unease because the original color contaminated the water in the well. And what we're about to do, since there are colors still left in the ground, is we want to submerge this part of woodland underwater. So probably this water will cover the dead earth and it will be contaminated, and this will bring death to Arkham. But then again, it's Arkham, so yeah, probably another ancient god or cosmic being will be there and spread death before the color, as we've read Lovecraftian stories. And there's a whole tabletop game called Arkham Horror about alien gods coming to Arkham to destroy humanity. So yeah, that probably the color is probably too late there. And I'll say that The color out of space is one of the classic Lovecraft stories. There was a recent movie adaptation that we will talk about in another video, so subscribe and you won't miss it. And it's not the best story Lovecraft ever did, according to many people. Well, it's my favorite, so yeah, I'm not one of them, but definitely is on his top stories because he takes the idea of a cosmic being, demonic sort of thing, creature we would see in gothic literature or horror novels, and it gives us the idea that this cosmic creature, it cannot be described by human senses, that it is a color and it's not a material thing, and it cannot be described by human senses. And that makes Lovecraftian horror transcendent. It tries to go over the conventions of the horror genre to the gothic genre of good and evil, and just presents humanity as prey to beings it cannot understand and they can be described, and that's what makes movie adaptations of Lovecraft so hard to do, because you have to depict something that can be depicted by human senses. So I don't know how they can do that, and that's why we don't have so many Lovecraftian horror movies, because Lovecraftian horror is more about not understanding what you witness instead of showing it to you, and that's very hard to do. And since this Lovecraft is a great author and he had his ears open, seen photos of this guy, his ears were definitely open. He left his creativity be inspired by what he was reading, so he gives us a story that, like his color, was just living underground there, and then when some very unfortunate tragedies happened, and you read those stories, it really, the story, The Color of Space, feeds on these real life occasions and their implications, and it grows and it manages to blast to a higher level because of it. Like the creature in the story, that's for me, that's amazing. Lovecraft never believed that he was a great author and stories would survive, and yet one of his stories is more relevant today than it was when it was written, and that's great storytelling, in my opinion. I would love to hear your opinions about Lovecraft and The Color of the Space. Do you like the story or not? If you like this video, please press the like button, subscribe for more videos like that, and if you want to see another story featured in a similar way from Lovecraft or some other classic sci-fi or horror author, leave a comment below and I'll do my best. Thank you for watching. See you soon with another video. Bye bye.